Reporter Nick Farbaugh, and I'm John Luciew. We are once again live on YouTube. We're coming on a little later because Nick literally just got off the practice field with the Steelers down in St. Vincent in Old Latrobe. So we're a little late, but you can still get your questions in the chat, and we'll get as many as to Nick as we can. As a matter of fact, we're going to go right to Nick for a developing situation out of this latest practice at training camp involving Will Howard, what looks to be possible hand injury, left practice early. Of course, we were all of Steeler Nation, looking forward to seeing a lot of Will Howard this Saturday down in Duval County when the Steelers take on the Jaguars in their first preseason game. But this could be a wrinkle. Nick, can you give us any further detail on what the injury is and whether this will affect that preseason game where we were hoping to get a large dose of Will Howard?
Yeah, it sounds like it's a hand issue. So happened on a center quarterback exchange from Mike Tomlin said. So I imagine that's probably a finger injury. You know, you can imagine when you kind of hit your hand, maybe you can pop back a finger or jam it, something like that. But he left the field. They're evaluating him. Johnny Smith went down with a knee issue today as well. Mike Tomlin said that's not too serious. So it seems like Will Howard's, at least by what it sounded like Mike Tomlin was implying, that his hand issue was a little more serious than Johnny's knee issue. So we'll see how severe this is. It could be, a dislocated finger. There could be a tendon issue. It could just be a jammed finger. It could be very minor. It could be something that requires surgery. Who knows what happened on the center quarterback exchange here. So we'll see. We don't really know what it is. So it's all over the place. My guess is it's a finger issue, not necessarily, a hand issue. It's a finger issue. And obviously that's on his throwing hand as well, which I think hurts it even more. The fact that it is on his throwing hand is a real issue for Pittsburgh. So we'll kind of see where it goes. I think certainly Saturday is a bit tenuous right now. We'll hear more from Mike Tomlin tomorrow, certainly on Thursday when he talks about who will play. But if he doesn't play, the Steelers do have Skylar Thompson and Mason Rudolph. So those two will probably rock and roll if he can't go. So we'll see what's going to go on there. But, yeah, Howard a little banged up right now.
Wow, that is disappointing to hear because, I mean, I know we have the other two guys who are getting a lot of action down in Jacksonville, but boy, just based on some of the buzz coming out of Latrobe, we all wanted to see Howard. We all wanted to see him in a game situation, be able to turn the TV on and watch and not sit down there in sweaty Latrobe and have to watch it. So, yeah, that's a disappointment. Who was the center on the exchange, and is there any idea what went wrong on that exchange?
Yeah, I mean, the center was Ryan McCollum, I believe, their second-team center. And so, kind of having that issue is – I mean, I don't think it's his fault or anything. I think it's kind of just unfortunate luck where sometimes you get, a finger – kind of hit, I mean, this could be as minor as a fingernail though too, right? I mean,
True.
You see in baseball all the time, broken fingernails that could turn to kind of bloody issues. And that's happened before. Trevor Bauer, for example, had that happen to him in the playoffs. So, I mean, it can be as minor as that too. Who knows what it is? My guess is it's a finger issue and probably something, jammed his finger, and hopefully this is minor and he's not out, very long. But maybe if it's jammed, he can even play on Saturday. So this could be anything from that minor to, he could miss time with this. So we'll see. It's very preliminary right now. Haven't heard a ton about it. Doesn't seem like something that they know a lot about right now. I mean, he got hurt halfway through practice. So he got hurt an hour and a half ago. So the only thing they've probably been able to do right now is maybe x-rays to rule out whatever. But there's not a bunch of testing equipment here either. So very possible he's going to have to go back to Pittsburgh, get tests run there as well. So we'll kind of see what ends up happening here. But, yeah, certainly a developing situation. And obviously is going to be a bummer if he can't play on Saturday because I imagine, against Tampa Bay, that's going to be the Aaron Rodgers warm-up game where he's going to play a little more. And then, maybe you have one more game there against Carolina. But, you want to see the young quarterback. I understand why fans want to see the young quarterback. So I think that's something that's obviously on their mind.
No, you're absolutely right, Nick. And just to give audience members who might not be following, your excellent reporting, which has been all over the place on social media and Penn Live, give us a flavor of Will Howard's camp experience this far. There's been a lot of buzz, obviously, in the fan base, but also, some quotes of coaches talking about how heady the guy is. So give us a like a 30,000-foot view of what his camp's been like, both in terms of his arm, his decision making, his scrambling ability. Just give us the thumbnail sketch of what he's done so far.
Yeah, I mean, so far, he started out as like QB3, QB4, kind of competing for those reps with Will Howard with Skylar Thompson, sorry. And obviously, he has taken over that spot, that QB3 spot. On the depth chart, he's already listed there. So essentially making himself, I think, a roster lock. Not that it was much in question, but I think certainly occupying that down. I also think he's just been pretty solid. Sure, have there been some rookie mistakes? Yes, he had what I would consider a pretty bad pick on Sunday. He's had a few overthrows, but overall, this guy's kind of just improved with time. His processing has gotten better. The game slowed down for him. He has decent natural accuracy, I think, to the short and intermediate areas of the field. I think when it gets deep, he can become a little scattershot at times. But I think he's just been really solid. He looks like someone that should have been drafted in the fourth round. Like we originally kind of thought he was going to go in the fourth, and he fell to the sixth. And to me, that's what he looks like. He looks like a guy that was underdrafted by about 2 rounds. He looks like a solid player. To me, he looks like a guy that could be a long-term backup in this league. So I do think there's been a lot of positives for Will Howard. So I would like to see him in a game. Obviously, that's the ultimate kind of judgment area. But so we'll see where that goes. But I would like to see that sooner rather than later, and hopefully we get to see it on Saturday. I'll be in Jacksonville, and I'll say this. There's not a lot of people going to Jacksonville, John. And when I kind of threw it out there to Austin, our sports editor, wonderful sports editor, to go, I said, "Hey, it's gonna be Will Howard's first game. That'll be big." So I'm hoping he's there, but we'll see.
Right. No, that's good. And boy, you have a way of talking yourself into these trips. I love it. Now,
I've never been to Jacksonville.
Well, yeah,
that'll be a new one.
Good. This must be a good time for our audience because we're getting a bunch of questions, and it really was one of my questions. And I wanted to take you to like the 30,000-foot level, because I know you covered camp chapter and verse, and you're all over Twitter with almost like a play-by-play of some of these practices, which is fascinating because you almost see it in your head just based on your Twitter feed. But at a 30,000-foot level, one of the trends, the big takeaways, trends that are going to transcend camp and bleed into the regular season. One of those trends is that the defense, at least writ large, has been utterly dominating the offense. And I want to know, and our guests here, our audience members want to know, is it the fact that the defense is just that good, with the additions we've had, led by Jalen Ramsey. And by the way, we have a really good feature on who is the real Jalen Ramsey and who's he going to be with the Steelers. So check that out on Penn Live. But is the defense that good, this retooled defense, this big splash play defense that we're all expecting, that good, or is the offense just still on shaky ground? What's your take?
I mean, listen, today was the best day for the offense. So it's kind of interesting we're talking about that right now. Is that we are talking about that. And this guy, when we're talking about Aaron Rodgers, I thought he kind of heated up towards the end of last week. And, there wasn't any starting corner out there today because Jalen Ramsey got the day off. Darius Slay had a half day, and then Joey Porter Jr. is still working his way back from a minor injury. And so, it's James Pierre and Brandon Echols. But this offense looked solid today. They at least had a rhythm. The offensive line was getting some push and team run drills. Best day for Roman Wilson today of the entire training camp. He made catch after catch after catch, had a few really nice catches from the outside, had a big dig route from Aaron Rodgers, had a great catch going to the ground in 7 shots in the back of the end zone. There's a lot of positives for the offense today. But I think overall the defense has just been so good. I mean, this secondary I think is something serious. I think this pass rush is going to be really good. They're adding more blitzes. They're adding more disguises. They're playing more coverages. It just looks more diverse. They're moving guys around the front. They're stunting fronts. They're doing different things on defense. The defense just looks awesome. And so I do think part of this is the defense just playing really well. But I do think the offense, has to get going. And I thought today was a good step in that direction. Despite not having the corners out there, the O-line had some nice push up front against the first team defense. We saw the offense start to get something going. DK and Rodgers seem to be now on the same page, which is nice. Rodgers is putting a ton of effort into trying to get Roman Wilson going. They were, off the side in the field multiple times today. They walked off the field together. I saw earlier. I thought things like that were really, really, really positive. So I do think the defense is going to be really good. I think the offense just has a lot of new pieces. They're experimenting with one another, trying to figure out what in the world are we doing and what works for us. So I do think there's a lot of experimentation going on there, and I do think the defense is naturally just further along than the offense is. But I do think at least there's positive signs. I wouldn't panic on the offense. I do still think they need a wide receiver too, and that's something we've talked about. I very much still believe that. So I think they need a bigger wide receiver too. Someone like Gabe Davis or someone else like that. I don't even love Gabe Davis, but they just need someone that can block. Because I think the biggest concern for me is Robert Woods just hasn't looked very good. I think Roman's had his moments. Roman can be a fine wide receiver 3-4. Calvin can be a wide receiver 3-ish type. And then you can get another guy that could be that wide receiver 3 type, and you can kind of cobble together a committee, if you will, right? Maybe not somebody that is going to take it over wholly, but a committee. And so I think that's something that is working together. So we'll see how this goes. But the offense right now still has a ways to go, but at least today I think was a good step in the right direction.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Now, what I want to drill down in just a little bit more on Roman Wilson. We all know last year, pretty much the entire season was wiped away. He had an injury in camp and never recovered. He apparently never learned the playbook to the sufficient level. Tomlin characterized it, the season, as a moving train, and basically he missed it. So what has been his issue? Because I have seen it characterized as somewhat, up until today, a disappointing camp for Roman Wilson. So what is the issue with him? What is he not getting?
I just think he's more of a slot than an outside guy. He hasn't faced a lot of press man in his career, even at Michigan. He's a very fast, explosive player off the line of scrimmage. He's able to separate on crossers. He's even got a little route running prowess. But when you get your hands on him, you can kind of throw him off. And, he's facing Jalen Ramsey. And he's facing Joey Porter Jr., who are guys that are good press corners. Press man isn't even Ramsey's forte, but he can do it, and he does it well. So does Darius Slay. So I think that's a big part of it. I also just think, Roman trying to work with Aaron Rodgers, I think for a guy like that, that's a big task. You're asking him to go and say, hey, be Aaron Rodgers' guy on the outside. That Z spot in Aaron Rodgers' mind has been a really important part of the offenses. I think guys like Jordy Nelson and Alan Lazard, those guys have really been really big crutches for him over his career. So that Z spot matters. And that's where Roman Wilson's been. And so you got to run the exact right route depth. You got to run the exact right timing here. You got to run the exact right stem. And you got to be on a telepathic connection with Aaron Rodgers. One thing, and I was talking with Zach Azzani, the Steelers' wide receivers coach, about Roman and Aaron Rodgers, because one thing about Azzani is he worked with Aaron his first year in New York. And he saw Lazard and Cobb and Rodgers work intimately with one another. And something about those guys is they kind of knew where the ball was going to be placed even before Rodgers was going to take the snap. They knew where that back shoulder ball was going to be thrown. They knew all of these intimate things that were important to understanding Aaron Rodgers. And so I think for a guy like Roman Wilson, those intimate little details are really important, but I think he's starting to pick up on them. This was certainly the best connection they've had today. Just kind of hitting on some time routes, hitting on an out route. They hit on a slant. They hit on a dig, timing-based routes. Because I remember Sunday, John, there was a throw on a sail route where Roman didn't take it flat enough, and Rodgers got mad and called him out and chewed him out. And it felt like there were at least positive things that were moving in the right direction. So we'll see how this Roman Wilson thing goes. I still think they need help, but maybe he can be a part of this offense. At least today was a positive step in the right direction. Now let's build on.
We got plenty of viewer questions coming in. One is exactly where I wanted to go, and it's the shaky left tackle situation for the Steelers, the Broderick Jones situation, his progress. I know he's had some injuries and he's been in and out of the lineup, but also all of this buzz and talk and how realistic it is that our big bodied brick crap house of a tight end, Darnell Washington, could be turned into a left tackle. I mean, is that within the realm of possibility? But and even if it isn't, what is the backup plan if Broderick just doesn't get it? If the light bulb don't go off?
Well, I don't think it's realistic to throw Darnell a tackle, and I know some people really like that idea, but honestly, this has been Darnell's most productive camp as a pass catcher. It really has. He's actually been looking really solid as a pass catcher over the last few days. He's able to separate. Like, he's got some build-up speed, man. When he works on a vertical plane, you run him on a seam, post, corner, something like that. He can run by you. Malik Harrison and Cole have been burnt multiple times by Darnell. He's able to win those faded routes. So I don't think that's going to happen. I think their backup plan is going to be Calvin Anderson and Dylan Cook. And I mean, listen, are you loving that backup plan? Probably not. It's not something that you're like, wow, I am head over heels for that. But I do think, Calvin Anderson's funny. I talked about Calvin Anderson on the podcast yesterday, and he's kind of funny. 90% of the time I think he's completely fine, and he looks solid. And then there's 10% of the time. You remember Kevin Dotson, where 10% of the time there were just two plays a game where he would things would just go haywire and he would lose badly. That's what I feel like it is with Calvin Anderson. And then you have Dylan Cook, who was hurt last year, had a Liz Frank injury with his foot. This year he looks really good. He's athletic. He's highly smart. He's got a lot of good things going for him. So I think they have some tackle depth there that maybe I didn't know they had coming into camp. So I think those guys will be your backup plans. I don't think you're shifting Faltano from right to left. I don't think that's a thing that's happening. I don't think Darnell Washington going to left tackle is fine. I think Dylan Cook and Calvin Anderson have looked fine. I don't necessarily they're going to be great players, but I think they could stop the bleeding if Broderick is just this disaster. I will say for Broderick, he finally got into full team drills on Sunday and did it again today. And I really think he's actually looked solid. He looked solid in one-on-ones on Sunday, and then today looked solid in the 2-on-2s. So there's some positives there working for Broderick.
Okay, that is very encouraging to hear, and obviously we'll be tuning in, to the preseason game to see how that entire offensive line looks and gels. But another really astute question from the viewers here. You talk about the wide receiver 2 shopping list for possibility for Omar Khan, and I know they don't sell starting left tackles at Walmart. But is there any chance that Khan goes shopping for another alternative backup to Broderick, based on who's available in the league?
I mean, I guess there is, but listen, they were really banged up already. And, I mean, Calvin Anderson's got an issue that I think is an oblique injury, and he's going to miss a little bit of time, and they still haven't signed anybody. Broderick was out almost a week. They didn't sign anybody. Gareth Warren, who's another one of the tackles, hurt. Haven't signed anybody. I don't think so. I very much believe that there is a lot of positives working kind of in the retrospect of that tackle position that I think they're okay with. I think they're okay with Dylan Cook. They've moved Spencer Anderson out there at times. So there's a lot of things that have gone nicely for that group that I think they are going to stay away from that. But I wouldn't be surprised if, we get to the last week of the preseason, Broderick isn't playing when they say, hey, we need something here. There's guys like George Fant that are out there that maybe you could go get. But right now I think they're going to ride with Broderick.
Okay.
I think they're going to ride with the other guys.
And just in general, just another 30,000-foot question. Is it with offense versus defense? Is it, and given all the new parts, including quarterback, receiver, and all the tight end, and all the younger guys on this offense, did we just underestimate the time it's going to take for this unit to gel? Is that part of the problem? And what's the solution to that other than time? And once you move into the regular season, and the record counts, I mean, there is no time left. We have to produce. I mean, how long is this process of this offense sort of being more cohesive going to take, I guess?
I mean, I don't know, right? And I think that's the big question is, hey, this could last. Like, it could take a while. Like, it just is what it is. This is not something that is on anyone's time. And the Steelers kind of have to hope it gets figured out sooner or later. There does have to be, at some point, some urgency there. Because while you can kind of go along slowly and you can say, hey, we're fine, at some point, the light does have to go on. And so right now, that light is not on. And there are things moving in the right direction. And so you hope by the end of next week, really, I think by that second preseason game when you have your dress rehearsal, things look at least palpable that you're on the precipice of figuring this out. But right now, I mean, to end last week, they were so out of sync, John. They were so all over the place, so haywire. So we'll see how it goes. But, I mean, the timetable has to be really in the next 2 weeks where we start to see strides. Today was a good first step, I think, in saying, hey, I think they're going in the right direction. But are they fully there yet? I don't know.
Okay. And as you watch the offense unfold and try to bring it all together, how would you describe the offensive identity that they're going to try to establish, for the 2025 season? I mean, how would you describe this offense and what they're going to try to do, and how are they going to try to do it?
I mean, I think what they're going to try and do is they are going to try and use their tight ends. They are going to absolutely run through your face. I think that's going to be a big part of this. They're going to go 12 personnel. They're going to go 13 personnel. They're going to go, as we talked about, 04 and 14 personnel. They're going to put 4 tight ends on the field sometimes. It's going to be a very tight end multiple offense. I think that's going to be a big part of this. I think they'll condense you, spread you out, try to find mismatches with these tight ends. I think DK Metcalf obviously is going to be your big XY receiver. That's going to be a big part of this. But it comes down to whatever your Arthur Smith offense is. Tight end heavy, using 12 and 13 personnel to try and create mismatches, try and get in play action. All of that stuff is, I think, what's going to happen. Also, guys, by the way, the recap I made private, it was an old video, so I'm uploading the one I actually filmed before today right now. So there's that as well. But, yeah, that's what I think the offense is going to look like.
Okay. And speaking of the offense, and then we'll move on, the first depth chart came out ahead of the preseason game this Saturday. And do we read anything into the fact that the buzzed about rookie running back out of Iowa, Caleb Johnson, is 3 on that depth chart behind, obviously, Jalen Warren and Kenny Gainwell? And what impact, because there's a lot of prognosticators, and certainly everybody in fantasy football is saying Johnson is the back to own in Pittsburgh, and it's only going to be a short amount of time this in the regular season when he's getting the lion's share of the snaps. Is that realistic, and how is that pecking order taking shape in the Steelers' backfield?
Yeah, I think, the interesting thing about Caleb is he has just gotten better every day. And you don't read much into the early – don't not read much into the early depth chart really at all unless there's, some odd outlier stuff. The Caleb stuff isn't an outlier. Kenny and Jalen are big-time vets that the Steelers like and trust. Derek Harmon, for example, being a starter, oh, yeah, they like Derek Harmon. You know what I mean? And so I do think when we talk about Caleb Johnson, I mean, he's been running as the running back 2 or 1 in a lot of these team reps. Just like Roman Wilson is the wide receiver 3 behind Robert Woods and Scotty Miller. He's been running ahead of them all training camp. He's been the wide receiver 3 by every metric. So, don't read too much into that. Caleb Johnson's going to play a lot on early downs. He might even play a little bit on passing downs if he keeps going forward here with pass pro, because he's continued to get better as a pass protection back. His performance in backs on backers on Friday was impressive. What he has done over the last few days, today was really good, running behind his pads and hitting an explosive play on his own run. He's just a natural fit for them. So I wouldn't worry too much about Caleb Johnson, and don't worry much about that placement. Caleb Johnson's going to be just fine.
All right. No, that's good to know. And you mentioned his name, and he was the next place I was going, because we'd be remiss, 2 weeks into camp, if we weren't talking about our number one draft pick, Derek Harmon. But it's almost like it's been so quiet because he's checking all the boxes and doing everything he's asked. Give us your 2-week assessment of Derek Harmon and how he's projecting into the regular season and the impact he's going to have on that defense.
Man, Derek Harmon has been explosive. He's been experienced. He looks like a veteran. Like, that's the thing. He's doing little things that you wouldn't expect a guy at his stage to do. We're talking about a guy that is not focused on making the big play all the time, because what he's actually focused on is holding up the offensive lineman for the linebackers. Like, that's really nice to see. There was a stunt and kind of looper drill, the crasher and the looper, that we often see in stunts. And he was holding up both guys, and then TJ Watt just went right by him for a free rush. Like, he does little things like that where you're like, this guy is like a veteran. And even when he's in one-on-ones and in team drills, he keeps showing out in those settings as well. So, yeah, that is exactly the most important thing. So, that is a big thing, I think, with him. So I think that he is fine. Harmon's playing well. You know who else is even playing well? Y.A. Black. So, yeah, I mean, both these defensive linemen are playing at a high level right now. So good on Derek Harmon. I think he's ready to go.
Another quick viewer question, and then we'll try to look ahead to how this preseason game will unfold before we sign off. Nick, how has Mark Robinson looked?
Mark Robinson's a heat-seeking missile. You know what he is. I know they used him a little bit at fullback, and so that caught some intrigue from people. But what Mark Rob has done has been, man, he has been a run-stuffing aficionado, I would say. Pass coverage has been what you've expected. It's not necessarily been great in pass coverage, but we are absolutely looking at a guy that is just kind of raring to go. A guy that is out there trying to make a statement in his own little role. Like, that's what he is. He's a special teamer. He's a hard-hitting, run-stuffing linebacker that plays in certain matchups. He's competing against Carson Bruner, their 7th-round pick for that. We'll see how it looks in the stadium. Bruner's going to have some nice special teams reps. But Mark Rob's looked good. We know what Mark Rob is, and he's lived up to that reputation.
All right. Now, given the question mark surrounding Will Howard, what will be the plan and the playing time? I mean, for this preseason game, especially on that offense, giving especially that offensive line needing time to gel together. What's going to be the plan and the playing time for those would-be starters?
Yeah, I mean, my guess is when you look at what they're actually going to end up doing, it's going to be I don't think we're going to see Rodgers. I mean, we could if he pushes for it, but I'm not expecting it. I think what we're probably going to see is Mason Rudolph start. If Will Howard plays, I think we'll probably get 1 or 2 quarters of him. And then I think we'll get a quarter of Skylar Thompson. So probably, a quarter of Mason, 2 quarters of Will Howard, and then a quarter of Skylar Thompson. If not, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw 2 quarters for each of those guys, Mason and Skylar Thompson. So I think that's what's going to be the plan. But I think ideally you would like to see a lot of Will Howard out there. So we'll see if the Steelers can get him on the field. We obviously don't know how serious that finger injury is for him.
When do you think we'll know more on that and whether he's a go or a no-go on Saturday?
I think we end up finding about that probably on Thursday. Okay. Maybe, I'm sure Mike T will be asked about it tomorrow. And, we'll see. It depends on if he has to go back to Pittsburgh testing tomorrow, if he needs MRIs, et cetera, et cetera. It's not completely, certain they're going to know tomorrow. But I think, he'll talk Thursday morning. and we'll know if Will Howard's going to play or not by then. So 2 days from now, I think we will have a good understanding of that and kind of where he stands. Would not be surprised if they just kind of keep him out as a precaution, honestly, at this point, because it is 4 days until they play.
Right. And when do just to give us a feel for the rest of the week at training camp, when do they start ramping down the practices as that preseason game and the travel day gets closer?
Well, they'll be in pads tomorrow, I imagine. So not tomorrow, but I think Thursday's usually like a mock game. It's a mock Friday, typically for the Steelers. They kind of throw in a few light game planning notes there. It's not a real high octane practice. There's nothing that's crazy about it. So generally, what happens with him with the Steelers, it kind of, hey, we're going to not be in pads on Thursday. We're just going to go game playing stuff. It's not really competition. It's more about let's plan for this team. Let's plan for their specific schemes. Let's plan for their players, et cetera, et cetera. So Thursday will be one. I'm sure tomorrow they will start doing some light game planning stuff probably to give these players a little bit of a mock week. And then I do believe on Friday they will have their full walkthroughs. They'll probably fly down to Jacksonville, I'm assuming, probably Friday afternoon, get to the team hotel, do all of that. So these players will get a little bit of a mock week leading up to this. So I think the cool thing for the players this year is, the Steelers have a short week for their last preseason game. They play a Thursday game against the Panthers instead of, a usual week long. So you kind of also get a mock Thursday night week, which is nice too, because obviously the Steelers will have one of those this year.
All right, there you have it, folks. The Steelers are poised to take the wrappers off the 2025 season down in Duval County, facing the Jags in their first preseason action. Stick with Nick because he's going to be one of the only Steelers scribes making the trip. We'll see if Will Howard suits up and plenty of other questions about that still to gel offense to be answered. And also maybe how good this defense could really be. All those and more to be determined, and we'll talk with Nick Tuesday, as we will every Tuesday throughout the season. So tune in on YouTube Live around 4 o'clock or whenever Nick gets off the practice field. Until then, go Steelers.